So they use the computer in their work or within their research. You see how technology brings the world together in only one touch, just one touch, and informations can be gathered. Are you not amazed? Are you not amazed, Brian? You are? You must be amazed. And next, I guess everybody is familiar with computers. Huh? And everybody already use the computer. Yes. And this is an example of a computer. So what is this? We have the water bath. Or is the water bath. What is this water bath? So water bath is a kind of instrument used in study of science wherein it can keep the water in constant temperature. So if ever you need to do an experiment needing a constant temperature, needing a high temperature, you can use the water bath for it. Why? Because the water bath has a control that you can make the water within that compartment within a constant temperature. Understood? Another important tool in studying science is what we call the jet electrophoresis. It is spelled with an E, phoresis. Okay, so what is this gel electrophoresis all about? This is used for separation of proteins, no? For the scientists to know the exact weight, the exact component of that present, the exact component of protein present within a substance. And this gel electrophoresis is commonly used nowadays in DNA engineering. Are you familiar with DNA engineering? DNA engineering. This is about machines? This is about genes, yes, no? If you want to change a gene, if you want to incorporate a new character from a gene, and then scientists introduce this or using the technique in DNA engineering to improve the quality of a certain organism. Do you have any question from the tools, the modern tools, the microscope, up to the other tools that are presently used by our scientists at present? Any question? As a recap, any questions first? Any questions, clarification? Any ideas you want to share? Okay, so as a recap, we say that one of the most important tools in science is what we call the microscope. No? Without the microscope, sit down, thank you. Without the microscope, small organisms cannot be identified. Not only that, some parts cannot be studied. Am I correct or not? Yes. Another, or what we call other tools, aside from microscope, a simple microscope. This is a type of microscope. Thank you for the additional information. So, microscope have how many types? Actually, we have 4 types of microscope. Yeah? So, as May had mentioned, additional information according to her, one kind of microscope is what we call the simple microscope. And simple microscope is useful in Observing minute organisms. All microscope tools are used to observe microorganisms, but what specific organisms you can observe if you use the simple microscope? The insects. Very good. So it is very useful in observing insects and the structures of the leaf. No? The venation of the leaf can be seen using the simple microscope. And nowadays, what do you call the commonly used simple microscope? At present, what is the commonly used simple microscope? That is the simple. What do you call the magnifying glass? Okay. So the example of simple microscope is the magnifying glass. Another type of microscope is what we call, yes, Christina? The compound microscope. And as we have discussed, compound microscope. This is the commonly used microscope by biologists and by the researchers. And what is the difference between compound microscope and simple microscope? Yes, Miss Val? It utilizes or uses two lenses. No? We call it the ocular lens and the objective lens. Another type of microscope is what we call the, yes, Brian? The phase contrast microscope. And the phase contrast microscope, this is used to observe living organisms or living matter. Again, who is the person who discovered or first used this phase contrast microscope? It is Fritz Zernike. And lastly, what is the most important tool, the most important kind of microscope nowadays? And they say that it is the most reliable microscope. What microscope is that? Yes, Angela?
Electron microscope.
That is the electron microscope. And the electron microscope, it utilizes or it uses electron beams instead of using light. And we have two kinds of electron microscope. We have the 10 and the 7. The transition electron microscope, and what we call the other kind is what we call the scanning microscope. And scientists also uses some other materials or some other gadgets. We call it now as gadgets. Important gadgets. Can you please cite what are these tools, modern tools aside from microscope that our scientists is using? Or the most commonly used instruments aside from microscope? Yes, Armando.
Autoclave, centrifuge, computer, water bath, electrophoresis. Yeah, electrophoresis.
Gel, electrophoresis. Okay, so all those, is it 5 or 4? 5. It's 5. So the autoclave, the centrifuge, the water bath, the computer, and the gel electrophoresis. These are instruments that also useful to our scientists aside from microscope. Any question from here before we proceed with our laboratory work? Are there any question from here? Understood? Okay, so I'll be giving you 30 minutes to do your thing, prepare for the laboratory, and then we will be having an activity regarding the microscope. Okay? Okay.